it's time for me to get personal. You've asked me some questions, and I have some answers for you. So, being a little silly, but a little bit unnecessarily serious here. So, this video, I'm going to answer the questions that you guys have asked me. A couple weeks ago, I put out a call for a Q A to celebrate the growth of the channel. I hit 1,600 subs while I was on holiday, which was amazing. And now it's time for me to answer your questions. So I'm going to answer them kind of in no particular order, just the order that I was able to collect them over the last couple of weeks. Initially, I had thought about grouping them by topic because a lot of people were asking questions about teaching in China, which is great. I'm going to answer those questions. But instead, I'm just going to go through them in no particular order. Speaking of the questions about China, I do have a second channel up now called Side Streets. I'm going to link to that below. In that channel, I will talk more and more about teaching in China, about living abroad, and just kind of more life abroad kind of things that aren't necessarily related to reading. But for those of you who did ask China-related questions, for this time, I will answer them there. But if you want to know more about what my life is like abroad, what life is like in China, what it's like teaching outside the US and things like that, please subscribe to that channel. I've got one video up there already, but there will be more coming soon. So let's get started here. So the first one up, first group of questions is from Pat at Book Chat with Pat. Pat has a great channel. Pat is really sweet lady. If you're not watching her, you should. It's hard not to like Pat. So first question she has, what was your major in college? Actually, I majored in writing. And in the final year of that program, I also did kind of a double major in teaching English as a foreign language. And that's how I got interested in teaching, because I quickly realized that I was not going to make a living as a writer, so I needed to find something to do with that. So how did you come to be a teacher in China? Okay, so this is kind of a long-winded answer, but I'm going to try and keep it short. So as I mentioned before, in my last year of university, I did an additional course to teach English as a foreign language. And the purpose of that course and certification was to go abroad and be an English teacher outside of the US. So teaching English as a foreign language. The first country I went to was Vietnam, and I taught there for 8 years. And then I did about a year in Thailand. Then I went to Saudi Arabia for about 4 years. And at that point, after 4 years in Saudi, I really wanted to just take a gap year and take a break. I had really worked really hard as a teacher, especially in Saudi. It was kind of a really stressful job, really stressful time. Little did I know at that same time, there was something called COVID-19, which was just debuting upon the earth. So I ended up getting kind of stuck in Thailand for a second time. From 2019 to 2023, 2022, 2023. And during that time, I had actually already applied to a couple different schools in China and was waiting basically to go to China, was waiting for COVID to finish and get over. I actually went through 2 different jobs during the COVID period. The first school actually closed. So I found the school that I work at now. I feel like I'm getting off topic here. So how did I choose China? Couple different things. I'll kind of keep it short. I guess the 2 main things are, one, I wasn't getting any younger at that point, and I felt like I didn't have too many countries left in me. One thing about working abroad is after 45, it's hard to get a job. If you don't have good experience and don't have good credentials and things like that. I do have good experience, I do have good credentials, but I am a bit old. It's a bit old for teaching abroad. In certain contexts, you also need to be focusing on certain types of schools. And China has a lot of really great schools. China has a bilingual school system that I'll talk more about. And it's a bit more mainstream And so they're not too concerned about you being young and pretty so much as you being experienced and serious about your teaching. So I was interested in China. I had always wanted to live and work in China. I had worked with quite a few people in other countries who had said really great things about working in China. And I just wanted to do it. I felt like I needed to do that and kind of have I felt like it was the chance to do it. I needed to take advantage of that. Also, obviously, the Chinese economy is just massive, and I just knew from talking to people, I ignored a lot of stuff in the media, but I just knew from talking to people there that there are great jobs in China, that the Chinese economy is not slowing down and it's not falling apart the way the media tells us. And I just wanted to be there and be a part of that. So yeah, plus also just was really interested in travel opportunities. And to be honest with you, China pays very well. And I think there's nothing wrong with, trying to get paid well for what you do. So there you go. This is continuing from Pat. I know that you teach younger kids. Are you the English teacher in your school, or do you teach other subjects as well? And then one more question. What are your students' favorite books? Okay, so let's back up. I know you teach younger kids. Are you the English teacher in your school, or do you teach other subjects as well? Okay, so yeah, I teach 4th grade English and science. And actually last year and this coming year, I will teach 2 groups with science and 1 group of English. So I'm kind of teaching more science than English now. Am I the only English teacher? No. So I teach in what's called a bilingual school. And a bilingual school in China is very unique from other bilingual schools. I have briefly worked in a bilingual school in Thailand, and it was nothing like this school at all. A bilingual school in China, at least the one that I work in, and I think the ones in the Shanghai area, are international schools that don't call themselves international schools. And the reason they don't want to call themselves as international schools is because it's very difficult for an international school to license itself and operate itself in China. So China is very, what's the word I'm looking for? China is very clear on the type of curriculum that it wants students to learn. If you learn in an international school, you will use a truly internationalized curriculum, and that's probably going to be a British curriculum. And that is possible to do in China. There are lots of international schools here. They are not banned, they are not blocked, they are not illegal or anything like that. But it is a difficult license to acquire, and the fee that goes with that license is quite high. Therefore, your school fees need to be very high. Therefore, you're putting yourself in a very different market, and you're kind of putting yourself at risk also. A lot of international schools here can struggle from time to time because their school fees are so high. The bilingual school system that I work in, we have a lot of expat teachers who will teach some subjects and also English. So let me explain a little bit about that. So I teach science, and in the primary school, which would be like, at our school is grades 1, 2, 3, and 4. Middle school starts in grade 5. I'm not sure why. But in the primary school, native English speakers, or we call them expat teachers, will teach English and science, okay? The English that we teach is not ESL. We teach mainstream English. We're teaching US curriculum. We teach Common Core English. So I'm not teaching kids how to read. I'm teaching kids to use reading to learn. So the kids, when they're with us, they aren't learning to read, they're reading to learn. And they're using their English to express their learning and to acquire knowledge, not necessarily just how to speak English. I'm really, really impressed, and I was really blown away when I first arrived at how fluent my students are. The students who are not fluent are actually the outliers, and they'll get put into an ESL-oriented class. So where do they learn grammar and vocabulary in my school? They will learn that from a Chinese English teacher. So we have Chinese teachers who also teach English. And I will say this, all of the Chinese staff at my school are fluent, 100% fluent. And it is absolutely wonderful, and it's really refreshing, and it really blew me away when I arrived. The reason it did, because I've taught in other countries where there will be non-native English speakers. For example, in Thailand, we would have some Thai teachers who would try to teach English, and they just didn't have the skill set to do it. But I have to say, like, Chinese, they can do it, and they do it well, and they're very well-educated people. So, so to answer your question, I am not the only English teacher in my school. I am one of, I don't know, 150, maybe 200. It's a very big school. My school is a part of 3 other campuses. My campus has grades 1 through 9. The other campuses will have 1 all the way up through high school. So, and the kids in our school is known for sending kids to study abroad, primarily America, UK, Canada, and Australia. So the English that they're getting now is the same English that their future classmates will be studying. So the idea is that when they go abroad, they have basically the same type of and the same level of English education and all other subjects as, you know, their classmates, so that they're not behind when they go abroad. So kind of a long-winded answer, but I think I got it. Students' favorite books. Of course, Harry Potter. I mean, it's grade 4. I kind of cringe about Harry Potter, but the kids like it. But some surprising classics too, like Charlotte's Web is very popular. I've turned kids on to things like Ray Bradbury, The Martian Chronicles. I've also got kids who love like The Magic Tree House. That's kind of a staple for, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So yeah, their favorite books are, you know, in English are surprisingly normal, surprisingly mainstream. I do get a lot of kids who read way above their level. Like last year, I had one girl who was reading Agatha Christie novels and absolutely loving them. And at first I was like, how much is she really getting from that? And I would sit down and talk to her, and I mean, she got it. She knew it. She knew exactly what was going on in those books. So yeah, a lot of kids really love to read. It's one thing I really love about teaching in China. China is a very literate country, and the kids at our school love to read. Reading is like the primary mode of learning and of instruction. We've always got like reading competitions going on, and it's just great. Kids always have books with them. Yeah, it's just great. Oh, another favorite, The Wild Robot, which is a great series. It's more of a grade 3, but the kids love it. And when they come into grade 4, I like talking to them about it because I like those books too. Those are great books. If you don't know The Wild Robot and you are around kids of grade 3, 4, even grade 5, can still read it and get a lot out of it. It's really, really good stuff. So there you go. Pat also asked, how are schools in China different from or similar to US schools? I think I've kind of touched on that a little bit, talking about the bilingual school system. One other thing I'll point out is that education in China is very serious. It's very, very, very serious, especially from a very early age. There are no certificates for participation. There are certificates for achievement. It's very results-oriented. It's very achievement-oriented. Sometimes that's very frustrating because sometimes you just want to let kids just be kids, but the society is what it is. You know, it's been constructed the way that it has with a purpose, and you know, education is very serious. It's very competitive, much more than I think in the US, possibly more than in any other country, at least any other country that I know of. Maybe Korea might rival it. I'm not sure. So, but it's very, very serious from a very early age. So, okay. Any other differences that I should talk about? I will say this though too, that like it's very safe here. It's incredibly safe. It's incredibly welcoming. It's not, you know, there's no metal detectors at the doors. Violence in schools, very rare. I mean, it's absolutely shocking if you hear about something in the news that happens at school. You know, school shootings, absolutely unheard of here. I know it's the internet. Now someone's going to dig out something and tell me, well, actually, there was a school shooting. You know, but I'm just saying, like, it's, even if 1 or 2 happened it's still like so very rare here. Just in general, China is much safer, much less violent, much less crime of all sorts. So there you go. Okay, let's move on here. Second set of questions is from Amy. I think it's Amy. It's at Amy Harbored in Pages. She says, as an early childhood educator and preschool ed tech, I am curious about the differences in the approach to teaching abroad versus in the US. I think I've said some of that already. Another difference I guess I could point out is testing. Testing is massively important in China, possibly overly important. It's not really my place to say, but testing is huge, and there are quite a few sort of checkpoint type exams that happen in an early age that set students down particular paths of learning. So testing is huge. Testing is very serious here. And the homework, there's just a massive amount of homework, which again, I don't know. I mean, it has both sides, you know. I can see the positive outcome of it is that the kids really do learn a lot and they do become very fluent and very smart very quickly at a very young age. The downside is sometimes they don't just get to be kids. And the downside is, as a teacher, you really do mark a lot of homework. And if you're not ready to do that, if you're not capable of doing that as a teacher, if you just want to be lazy and you think coming here is just an easy thing, you are in for a shock and you will not make it here. So, moving on with Amy. Have you had an opportunity to observe the younger classrooms? The youngest I've observed is grade 1, which kind of goes to your next question. Is early childhood 6 months to 4 years an option where you teach? It is not. So preschool and kindergarten are kept separate in most Chinese schools. I'm not sure why that is, but kindergartens always seem to be like a separate entity, and preschool is a separate entity. So schooling, I think it's just a cultural thing. Schooling kind of starts at grade 1. So all the kinder stuff is kept separate. So I have not seen anything of that age, although it is certainly an option to come and teach that, and it's huge. Kindergarten is a huge deal in China. So if you are an early childhood educator and you're good at what you do, you might really want to consider coming to China. Continuing with Amy, if you have observed the littles with their teachers, is the focus on social, emotional, and learning through play or on academics? Okay, so this kind of goes back to what I said. I don't know about early childhood education. I think early childhood education is social, emotional, and play-based. Of course, there will be some academics, but I think at that age, like, it's hard to get kids to like sit down and read, you know, or write or things like that. The other reason I say that too is, like, I know from the grade 1 teachers at our school, most of their focus really is just like learner training, which is like developing the routines in kids and setting them up for success throughout school. That's a huge part of what they teach. So obviously they're not getting that in their kindergartens, which, I mean, it's okay, it's kindergarten. So social emotional learning is a big deal in China, although they definitely have a very different take on it. Some people look at it and think it's a bit like, it's a bit too tough or uncaring and things like that. But I don't know, there's so many different ways to do it. What I will say is, like, there's a lot less hand-holding here. You're not likely to see certificates for participation. There's a big emphasis put on achievement, but at the same time, there's a big emphasis on just like pushing as many kids as you can to achieve. It's not acceptable to only teach the high ability students. You know, we try to push everyone to be the best that they can be. Next set of questions is from @apretty_bookshelf. Tell us something interesting about you that you haven't mentioned before. No idea. I don't know. I don't know what's interesting. I don't know what's interesting about me. I can scuba dive. I don't know. Is that interesting? I don't know. It's hard. I'm not the kind of person that thinks like, oh, I'm cool and I do cool things. It's just, I just do what I do. Number 2, what's your favorite country or place that you've been to and why? That's a hard question to answer because every country is different. Every country has different, every country's had great things about it that I've been to. But I would say it comes down to 2 countries, Vietnam and Thailand. I really had a profound and long love affair with Vietnam, the country, with the people, and maybe 1 or 2 of those individual people. But I was there for 8 years. It was my first teaching job. I think the first time you go work abroad, if it clicks, that's the one that you really like the best. So for some people that might be Korea, it might be Spain, it might be Italy, but I think your first country where you succeed is the country that you have the strongest affinity to. But for Vietnam, I loved the food. The climate was great. It is surprisingly not that hot compared to other Southeast Asian countries and destinations. They do have seasons and things like that. But the food, the people, Vietnamese people are just unlike any other people in the world. I don't know how to describe it other than just like, there's so much to admire in Vietnamese culture. So resilient and yet not, not fostering resentment or anything like that for things that have happened to them in the geopolitical theater. Food, culture. The Vietnamese food is just amazing. I still sometimes find myself craving bun nem nhung or bun thịt nhung, things like this, or cà phê sữa đá. I don't know. It's just like, it's such a great place. It's really hard to articulate, and I should get better and learn how to articulate it. Thailand, I also really love. Thai culture, some aspects of Thai culture I really don't like. Some aspects of Thai culture are very special and very unique. It's a great country. It's a very open country. I think that's probably one of the things that I like about it and that a lot of people like about it, is that it's an easy place to go to, and it's an easy place to just kind of be yourself and just live the way that you want to live without, impacting other people in a negative way. I don't know if that makes any sense. Next question, still from a pretty bookshelf. What do you consider to be your proudest personal achievement, and why? I'm not really good at this kind of stuff, which is ironic because I'm a teacher and I really am proud of my students' achievements. So I guess I will just say that, just like having been a teacher for a long time. And actually, I will say one of my more recent proud achievements, I did not start teaching children. I started teaching adults, but I pivoted to teaching kids at a time when I was kind of at a crossroads and I was wondering, like, should I get out of teaching or continue? And if I continue, how to continue? And I took the plunge to teach kids, and I'm really happy that I did, and I'm really proud that I did. And I'm good at it. I will say that. And I'm proud that I'm good at it. I don't like toot my horn about it, but if you are a teacher, you'll understand what I'm going to say now. Or if you've got kids in school, you'll probably really understand what I say now. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people teaching that don't enjoy teaching or are kind of done teaching and need to move on to the next thing. And I'm glad I'm not one of those people. I'm glad that I really do enjoy teaching. I really do enjoy helping my students, helping their families. I think that there's a real greatness in being a teacher, and there's a greatness in helping others become their best. And through that process of helping others become their best, you become your best. So moving on, the next question is again from a pretty bookshelf. Who or what inspires you in life? I don't know that I have like specific individuals that inspire me. I don't have anyone's, like, I don't have Abraham Lincoln's picture up on the wall or anything like that. I guess what I will say is, like, as you get older, you kind of like see through the myths that cultures communicate to us. So the people that I find inspiring are actually generally my students or their families, or when I've met other great teachers who just are great at what they do. I always find that really inspiring. And I'm actually always really inspired by just about anyone who's just great at something that they do, specifically like musicians, artists, crafts people, things like that. People who just, they do something, maybe it's just one thing, but they just do it so well. And I just find that really, really, really inspiring. Sometimes it inspires me to try to do what they do, just to kind of get a feel for what it's like. When I was trying to be a musician, it took me a long time to realize that that's actually what I was just trying to do, was just to kind of like get a taste of that kind of inspirational water or air, whatever it is. But yeah, I think that anytime you come across someone who's just fantastic at what they do, whether they're living or dead, whether it's past or present, you know, those kinds of things can be inspiration. I'm often inspired too by people who are not, you know, necessarily famous figures or anything like that, just kind of everyday people, but they're just great at what they do. I just find that really inspiring. Last question from a pretty bookshelf. If you could invite one author to dinner, dead or alive, who would it be and why? I think I would invite Flannery O'Connor to dinner because I have loved her writing since I first read it in school. I often recommend her writing, and I just think that she would just be a fantastic dinner guest. I think she'd be highly entertaining to talk to. I think you could learn a lot from her. And yeah, I just think that would just be a great conversation and a great night to have. So there you go. Okay, moving on to @ContrabandPigments. Which books or authors are most frequently recommended to you by viewers of your channel? I don't know if there's like any specific books that are consistently recommended. A lot of people recommend more Han Kang books because I did a big review of The Vegetarian by her, and I do need to read more, especially Human Acts. I think, yeah, Human Acts is probably one book that gets recommended to me a lot, which I still have not read. I can't think of anything that really is outstanding. I have a big video that consistently does pretty well where I ranked crime and rural noir books. And a lot of people have recommended more books in that genre to me, which has been really cool. So there you go. Okay, another China question. Okay, this is a weird one and I need to talk about this. Living in China, how aware of the government and or surveillance are you in your daily personal life? Okay, so I just have like, okay, I've traveled literally all over the world, through Europe, through most of Asia and America. Every country has surveillance, okay? So, in fact, I would wager that America has more surveillance than China does. I would wager that America has a longer history of surveilling its own population than China has. So, is there surveillance in China? Of course there is. Of course there is. So, why is there surveillance in China? Well, why wouldn't there be? I mean, there's surveillance in the UK, there's surveillance in America, Canada, Australia. I mean, every country has surveillance, right? Governments want to know what its people are doing because governments are afraid of its own people. This is the way it works. How aware am I of it? I'm not aware of it. You know, I don't walk down the street and like count the cameras. There's a camera, there's a camera, you know, I'm sure there are cameras around. Look, there's traffic cameras everywhere and, you know, they serve a purpose. They actually do a pretty good job of it. You know, I don't ever like hear like a wiretap on my phone or anything like that. I think that there's I don't know, I guess I would like to ask you, Contraband Pigments, have you been to China? Do you live in China? It's a tough question to answer because I know like I know there are a lot of political issues around this. And I know that China has surveilled people for its purposes. I don't know, it's not my place to judge that kind of thing. Am I aware of it in my daily life? I'm really not, to be honest with you. I'm really not. last time I went home, I was more concerned about US immigration and about what was going to happen with my phone when I entered the US than I have ever been in any country before. And I've lived in other communist countries, which are supposedly so terrible and evil, right? So yeah, I'm just not aware of it. And I don't worry about it. I don't conspire against any government. So I don't really worry about it. So there you go. Okay, so another China question. Have you encountered problems with censorship? No, I haven't. I don't publish things, so I don't worry about that. So yeah. I do know that, like, yeah, you need to be cognizant of like what opinions you express to certain people. But I think that that's also just like normal. I don't know. I mean, this constant need to like broadcast negative opinions about everything. I just don't like, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't get it. So no, I have not had problems with censorship. I've never had anyone like call me and say, stop talking about that. You know, you're going to get arrested. I just don't worry about it. But again, like, I don't conspire against the Chinese government. I don't understand it well enough to analyze it and to say that it should do this or it should do that. So I don't know. I don't really worry about that. But I do know that, like, if I did have opinions about things, there are appropriate ways to express those opinions. They're not always related to the government. A lot of them are just related to culture as well. It's a lot of things that if you're outside of China, I understand. I didn't understand it myself. When you're outside of China, you don't really understand Chinese culture. I don't understand Chinese culture greatly, even now, even though I live here. But criticism, and this is actually common throughout Asia, Western style criticism, where you just come right out and criticize something, never goes over well in any Asian country I've ever lived in or visited, not just China. So there are ways to say, like, I noticed that something here, you know, is a little different, or maybe there's a problem here, or why does this happen here? You know, there are ways to say that, and then you don't have to worry about censorship. So, also, again, from Contraband Pigments, very curious about China. What do average Chinese people think of America and Americans? I have no idea. And let me tell you why I have no idea. So, first of all, there's 1.4 billion Chinese people. So I don't know how to sample that population to get a generalized outlook of the Chinese population on America and Americans. I will say also, like, my exposure to Chinese people is largely through my work. And I can tell that the Chinese people that I know through work, my Chinese coworkers, they're exceptional in the sense that they're very well educated. Many of them have been educated abroad. Many of them have higher education abroad, master's degrees, PhD degrees. So obviously, you know, they have a different experience with Americans or living outside of China for a prolonged period of time, more than just a holiday. So their opinion of me as an American, you know, is going to be different than, you know, the lady that I buy pork noodles from, who probably hasn't ever left Shanghai. You know, she's going to have a very different opinion. I don't know what her opinion is, but I will say that her opinion, you know, she's nice to me, she's kind to me. I've never had anyone, you know, say bad things to me because I'm an American. I've never had anyone laugh and say, oh, you're American, Trump, you know, things like this. You know, I will say it's embarrassing right now being an American because we have the Trump administration. So I'll leave it at that. So, another question from Contraband Pigments. If I wanted to gift you a book, what would be the easiest way to get it to you? Send it to me through the mail. Finally, what was the most terrifying situation in which you found yourself in a foreign country? I haven't been lucky. I haven't had terrifying situations. I've never been kidnapped. I've never been outside of the US. I've never been mugged. I've been mugged in America. Outside of the US, I've never had a gun held against me. I've had guns pulled on me in America. I've never had terrifying situations. I've had a few like health problems where I've wondered like, like, whoa, is this it? This is serious. I've had like motorbike accidents. Those were never that serious. I did once, like one time in Vietnam, I had a really bad stomach problem, which didn't get diagnosed properly, basically, initially because of my fault. I didn't go to a doctor when I should have. I had dysentery, and I just thought, I just have diarrhea. I just have a bad stomach. I had dysentery. And I was out for about a month, and I was off of work. And during that period of time too, like I think there were 3 or 4 days where I was just gone. I was just out of it. I was just asleep. All I did was just wake up, go to the toilet, go back to sleep. It was horrible. One of the worst things I've ever had. And I was really lucky because my employer was very reasonable and very understanding of the situation. And I had some great Vietnamese friends who also helped me a lot. And if they hadn't helped me, it probably could have been a lot worse. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, moving on. We got some shorter questions here from Marsha Johansson. Marsha's a really nice lady. I know her from the Life on Books Discord. Hi, Carl. Since you have lived abroad, have you learned to speak multiple languages? Kind of. I did learn to speak Vietnamese, although not formally. I just picked it up and had some really great Vietnamese friends. I had a great Vietnamese girlfriend for quite a few years. She taught me a lot of Vietnamese language. So just Vietnamese. Thai, I kind of started to get fluent in the last 2 years that I lived there because I was kind of living more independently at that time, and I just forced myself to speak Thai. I didn't learn any Arabic, even though I lived in Saudi Arabia. I'm sad to say I have not really learned any Chinese, even though I live in China. So, Magnino Alex Wilkins. When did you start living abroad? I first moved abroad in 2007, and I've stayed abroad since then. What is that experience like? That's a huge question. Not that I don't want to answer it. Obviously, there's more good to it than bad because I've stuck with it. There were a couple points where I did consider going back to live in the US, going back to work in the US, different circumstances. One of those circumstances was COVID, prevented me from doing that. So it didn't really prevent me, but led me to choose not to do that. So, but it's a great experience for me. It's not for everyone, but I have absolutely loved it. At Nev's book channel, what was the first longish chapter book you ever read? Well, it would have been something in school. I don't know what longest chapter book, I don't know what qualifies for that, but maybe Charlotte's Web. I think that's about a 3rd grade book. I do remember reading that. Yeah, I guess I'll go with that. At David Novak Reads Poetry. He's got a really cool channel. What do you miss most about Vietnam? I think I've talked about this a little bit. People, food, culture, history, everything. I mean, it's just like, you can't just like take one aspect out of Vietnam, which is what I really like about it. It's like a whole package. And a lot of people say that, like, you either love, when you're in Vietnam, you either love the country or you just don't like it, or it just doesn't get on with you. I really liked it. It really got on with me. So, at Sui's Book Banter. What's your favorite place you've lived and why? Again, Vietnam and Thailand, although I think China is definitely moving up the list. So, why? I think I've talked about why. Culture, lifestyle, food. And that sounds really silly, but food is really important to me. And yeah, I think that those are the best things. At Books for the Back Porch, this is Matt. Matt has got a cool channel. We've become pretty good friends. You read some lesser known books. Is it hard to find some of those underrated gems while in Shanghai? It certainly is sometimes. I'm often surprised by all the books that I have here I've bought over the last year in Shanghai. I've spent too much time and money buying books, but I love it. So to be more specific, literary titles are pretty easy to find. Even from like small press like Deep Vellum, Coffee House Press, those kinds of presses I can find here. Anything that comes from a major publisher that's literary, I can find it. Obviously, as long as it's not like anti-China. When it comes down to genre, science fiction is wildly popular in China, and I'm really surprised at like the lesser known science fiction you can find here. Popular science fiction, not so much. Obviously Dune, but yeah, you can find a lot of great science fiction titles here. In terms of like crime, like which is what I really like to read and what Matt likes to read too, we've kind of bonded over that. That I can't really find here. And I think it's just because it doesn't sell well. So it's just not readily available. So those I do buy online, I buy as ebooks, but I'm really surprised at things that I can find. Even things that I thought were maybe a little too sensitive, stuff like Human Acts by Han Kang, that's here. Actually, all of her books are available here. So yeah, I have not had a hard time finding like underrated gems or things like that here. Matt also asks, who was one of the first authors you really connected with? I think like a lot of people, Stephen King is the one that comes to mind. Although I don't read Stephen King anymore, I felt like I grew out of it. I'm not putting down people who read Stephen King. I just kind of like, I don't know, I just moved on from it. I read Stephen King. I've talked about this in other videos. Like I probably started reading Stephen King a little too early. I don't know if my parents really knew what I was reading. So yeah, Stephen King would be one. Jack London. Before Stephen King, Jack London. I do really remember loving his short stories. And I think also Ernest Hemingway, who I read, again, probably too young to really understand it, but I liked it. I started to read the Ernest Hemingway short stories in 8th grade. My 8th grade teacher pushed that book on me because he knew I loved reading and I was interested in writing. So yeah, so I would say those three, which I guess are now, not really profound choices, but given my age and where I grew up, that's what was going around. So at Evening Reader, she's got a really cool channel. What's the book you recommend the most? I prepared for this. So I hope you're watching this, Evening Reader. I prepared this for you. It's a three-way tie. In no particular order. A Good Man is Hard to Find, Flannery O'Connor. I don't know if that's focusing or not. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, Carson McCullers. The Devil All the Time, Donald Ray Pollock. These are the three books that I consistently recommend to people even before I started BookTube. Just great authors, great books. Flannery O'Connor, I recommend her a lot to people who want to go back into reading, who probably may have read some of her short stories either in high school or maybe in a college lit class and like American lit, that kind of thing. She kind of gets like, because it's for something read in school, it kind of gets passed off as like, you can move on from it. But Flannery O'Connor, great American writer, very interesting person. These short stories, I mean, you could read these again and again throughout your whole life and just, they're always there to enjoy. So love her. Same can be said for The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. This is a book that just does not get read enough, although I think it was incredibly popular in its time. And I think Carson McCullers was something of a celebrity in her time, but then became a bit of a recluse. Again, also a very interesting person. Absolutely heartbreaking book, but written so well. Just absolutely, I think it's just an absolute masterpiece. And then The Devil All the Time, Donald Ray Pollock. I recommend this to a lot of guys who read things like The Road or Ernest Hemingway and stuff like that, to kind of push them like you can read a manly book, but not get stuck in alpha male world. There's a lot going on in this book. It's really centered around like a broken family and examines how the family became broken, what are the consequences of that broken family. And also it talks a lot too about like broken American society, death of the American dream, all the fun stuff. So, so those would be my 3 books that I recommend. Oh, she's got one more question. What's a book you read based on someone else's recommendation or maybe were given that you enjoyed more than you expected? I would say the one that stands out would be The Vegetarian by Han Kang. That was recommended to me. I was talking to someone about Han Kang, like I'd heard about Human Acts, and someone said, you should try The Vegetarian. That one will really blow your mind. And it really did blow my mind and like really opened me up to a lot of new ideas, a lot of new style of writing. I had read some Korean authors before in translation, obviously, but she's very, very unique. So I think that was really great. Also, another recent one, I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, really blew me away. Was not what I was expecting at all. I had heard some people talking about it. I think I'd read or listened to something on BookTube, but really a much different book than what had been described to me in a really positive way. That book just absolutely blew me away. So much happening in that book. Okay, moving on. At Cafe Cryptic says, I'm very curious if you've noticed differences in reading habits through different cultures, whether it's in school or on students' personal time. I'd also be curious to hear how it was moving and working and living in a new country for your first time. Okay, so a couple different things there. I'll try and do this briefly. Differences in reading habits in different countries and in different cultures. I guess I'll rank them. I think China and Vietnam, top 2 neck and neck for reading ability and for reading being prevalent in the culture, for being like literary cultures. And obviously they have history where literature, poetry, storytelling, performances, plays, music are integral parts of the culture throughout time and through different cultural movements, different cultural revolutions, things like that. Yeah, very literate people. Thailand, not so much. I would say Thailand was near the bottom. Saudi Arabia, not much reading going on there because it's a very like it's an oral tradition. The culture has an oral tradition with the Quran and with Bedouin people, with nomadic people. When I taught in Saudi Arabia, it was not unusual to have students who had recently learned how to read and write. Could speak, were fluent, verbal, all that kind of stuff, but had just never, like, even in their own language, were sometimes still learning to read and write as adults. So, which is not to put them down, but it was just the way it was. So, yeah, I'd say China and Vietnam, definitely the top 2 for readers and for students who read, and for reading being a part of family life, reading being just a big part of the culture. So there you go. I'd also be curious to know how it was moving and working, living in the country for your first time. Big question to answer. Maybe I could talk more about this in a different video on my other channel. Exciting. Yeah, I would just say exciting. That I can still very clearly remember the first time, in 2007 when I moved abroad. It was exciting. I had traveled before, but I had never done it for an extended period of time. And so there was this feeling of like, when I did move to Vietnam and I had a job lined up and all this kind of stuff, I just felt like, okay, I'm here. I'm not on holiday. Like, I'm here. I can take it slow, and I'm just gonna I'm gonna live here. This is what it's gonna be like. And it was very exciting, sometimes maddening, like sometimes just weird, like just trying to figure out how things work. Even things just like, how do I pay my electric bill? Because when I was there in 2007, digital economies and things like that were just not online and just not prevalent. So there was a lot of like, you have to go to this office and take a wad of cash with you and your bill and get a number and pay, so there was like a lot of different things. It was very exciting, sometimes very frustrating, but overall just like a really very rewarding experience. And I'm really happy that I did it. I'm really happy that my first country was Vietnam and that I had such a great time with it. At Book Mad Brian. I think Brian and I were together in the Better Than Food Discord for a while. But yeah, he's commented on some stuff on my channel. Cool guy. Maybe you could talk about the T-shirts and your music tastes. Yeah, so I guess I have a lot of band T-shirts. They're really cheap here in China. Like this My Bloody Valentine shirt cost me, I think, about $7. Less than $10 for sure. I used to think these were bootleg, but I realized they're not. They're just printed here and sent to other stores in other countries, but they're just really cheap here. So yeah, I'd like to collect them because I know like when I go back home to San Francisco, I go to a place like Amoeba Music. If I were to buy this T-shirt there, it'd be at least like $30, and it's $7 here. So it's like, why not? I also like these too because they're made for export, so they fit. So I don't have to worry about how they fit because I'm kind of a big guy. My music tastes. Holy cow, that's a huge question. I don't want to say that I'm the guy that listens to everything, but I do kind of listen to most everything. My music tastes have really changed a lot. I will say that now I mostly listen to jazz and post-rock, like instrumental post-rock. I used to really be into electronic music because I kind of messed around with being a DJ for quite a long time. So I used to have a really strong love for house and techno, but I don't know. Like after COVID, I just kind of lost the taste for it. So yeah, mostly just jazz. I've listened to jazz ever since I was young. My dad had a good jazz record collection, and we had a good jazz radio station, KBEM 88.5. Grew up listening to that a lot. Jazz has been the one constant for me. I obviously went through a shoegaze period. I still listen to it sometimes, but mostly now I just listen to jazz and post-rock. Especially Mono is a huge band that I really like, so that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know, that's kind of a huge topic. Sorry. If you want to know more, you can ask more specific questions, I guess. At Burn Enough. Do you know about the Secret English bookstore in Shijiahui? Shijiahui is a neighborhood in Shanghai, near the downtown Shanghai area. It's called Biblioverse. I went there 3 times. The first 2 times it was closed. Third time it was open. It's mainly like a used bookstore. I don't think I bought anything at that time because it's used and it's sort of luck of the draw. And used bookstores abroad, especially used bookstores in Asia, they depend a lot on people passing through, giving them books or selling them books, or people leaving and like selling off their collection. Like someday I'll leave and I'll sell all these to someone. Secondhand bookstores in Asia really depend on that more so than in the US, because like in the US or UK, Canada, they can also buy from estates or libraries and things like that. My point is, like, there's not a lot of foreigners around in Shanghai right now. There hasn't been since COVID. So, there's not a lot of good secondhand books around. So, okay, almost finished. At Books and Bookadillos, she asks, how many languages do you speak? Do you read in a language other than English? I think I've said before, I used to be able to speak Vietnamese, but I'm sure I've lost a lot of it. But when I hear it, I do understand it. I can speak Thai on a very basic level. I can't have much of a conversation, although last time I just came back from Thailand, I was surprised at what I could still say. Can I read in a language other than English? No. I used to be able to read some basic Vietnamese, like I could scan headlines and basic newspaper articles and understand those. I could understand signs and instructions and things like that, but I couldn't read a book. Thai, I never learned to read Thai. I never studied it. Yeah, so no, I can only read in English. Sorry. Last one, at Rohan, I don't know how to say this, Rohan Mogokar 5682. Oh, this question. Okay. If I was a total newbie, want to understand Chinese myth and Confucius, then what books would you recommend? Chinese myth has always confused me. Sorry, no idea. I think I already answered this in the comments. Not an expert on Chinese myth, not an expert on Confucius. I teach English, so I don't know. I can't help you there. So there you go. Sorry about that. So there you go. I want to say thanks if you've stuck with me this far. It's been a long video. I tried to answer most of the questions as well as I could without talking for hours and hours and hours about random stuff. If you want to know more, you can always ask more questions. I want to say thanks to all the people who did ask questions, and I want to say thanks to all the new subscribers I've had, and of course all the subscribers I've had with since the beginning. It's been a pretty cool, pretty interesting ride, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Again, thank you very much. In case you didn't know, my name's Carl. This has been Please Read Your Book.